So Atila Neves used to work for the security team in the IT department at CERN. He holds a PhD in particle physics and has also worked for Cisco several years. He's currently the co-leader for the D programming language and works as a programmer for Symmetry Investments. Atila, we will be happy to know more.
Okay, so life of a CERN. Does it exist? What is it like if it does? So this is just a short summary of my story. I'll go into it in the slides that follow. And so this is just up there as a kind of preview. So how did I get to CERN? I'm originally from Brazil. I'm in Brazil right now, actually. And I was studying in Portugal. I was doing physics. But I was already being a bit weird because we got to pick some of our subjects. And I ended up studying a bunch of stuff that had nothing to do with physics as well, like biophysics, artificial intelligence, and things that have to do with programming. So I was already moving towards that. But there was an opportunity to do a PhD at CERN. And I imagined myself 10 years later at a pub telling someone I could have gone to CERN, you know, and that basically sealed the deal in terms of deciding where to go. I did an internship for a month in the year 2000 and ended up deciding to come back. And I was a PhD student doing physics and the NA60 experiment from 2001 to 2006. If you haven't heard of NA60, that's fine, because if it's not on the LHC, did it even happen? And then I was at CERN I think I'm moving on too fast. But anyway, I had a PhD grant from a government institution in Portugal called FCT. They paid me 10 euros a month, which obviously living in Geneva and that is not particularly great. But it turns out that there's worse than that, which is not having any money at all, which is what happened when my grant ended. And so I did the only thing I could do and moved to the only place that was free in the whole entire world, which was my parents' place. And I ended up finishing my PhD from there, even though the internet connection wasn't that great. And so as a very early remote worker, over a year, I worked in there. And when I left, there was absolutely no indication that what I was doing was going to result in a thesis. And so there was no guarantees that I would have actually even finish. But a few months after I moved, and when I saw the Monte Carlo peak look exactly like the data peak I had, I nearly cried. And at this point, I decided that I was never going to do physics again. But I ended up back at CERN. And why? Well, I wanted to work in software engineering at that point. What I wanted to do was finish the PhD, write the thesis, and after that, work as a software engineer. I didn't want to be in an interview and have to explain why I didn't finish PhD. What did I do for all those years? And I thought that it was going to be hard to explain to potential employers how a physicist is looking for programming jobs. And I decided that probably a good stepping stone would be to do IT at CERN, because they're used to physicists, they know what we're like, and therefore it'll be easy to get hired there, which ended up being the case. And so I applied for a fellowship. I got it in the IT department. Don't know if it's still called the IT department, because CERN keeps changing the names of the divisions all the time. And I was working in the security team there for 2 years. So standard fellow contract, 1 year, renewable for another year. I asked for an extension and they said, well, we've already hired a guy to replace you, so no, bye. And also that meant handing in the D permit I had that allowed me to be in Switzerland. And so now what? I went on holiday for 2 months and didn't really think about it. And then I got back to Geneva because I had a flat there, and to decide what to do, whether to move out or not. And I literally woke up one day, looked at all my guitars, of which there were 5, and decided it was far too much work to move them. And so I'd stay in Geneva. And therefore, I decided to stay in one of the most expensive cities in the world with no income, no permit, and no job prospects. And it was right after the financial crisis, which meant nobody was hiring. So 2009 was definitely not a year you wanted to be looking for a job at, trust me. And I ended up doing a lot of things during that time. I worked in a pub, I worked in a nightclub, I did quizzes at the pub, I played at pubs, so I played gigs. And I even was a removal man for one day, had to wake up early, rent a van and help somebody move. And I was very close to leaving due to money running out. I had saved some money, and also had the pension money that CERN paid out to me. But things ended up working out in the end. And I got a job at Cisco. And Cisco Systems at the time, they had, well, they still have an office at Perl in Vaud. And then they moved nearly everybody to the EPFL campus. And I worked there for nearly 7 years. And it was really good in the beginning because we were like a startup within a big company. We didn't really do things the Cisco way. We did things our own way, which meant we get to pick our own tools and worked with some really smart people, learned a lot in my time there. And mostly in C++, but also some C code and some Python code there. The Python was mostly for testing purposes. That's how we tested the code we were writing. And we were doing middleware for networking environments. So we provided services and abstracted away the actual networking protocols that were used to deliver those services, including, for instance, what location is this device in? And the code was running on a lot of different types of devices, from Mac notebooks to routers, switches, video cameras, and it was all the same code base. Android and iOS at one point. We demoed some Android code in Barcelona at the telecommunications fair. All of it, nearly all of it, low-level networking. I lost count how many networking protocols I've implemented at this point by reading RFCs. And which, you know, the experience at CERN actually really helped here because I was used to dealing with binary data coming from the detectors, and it's very similar in that aspect of it. But after our project ended, they weren't allowed to fire us because they have a contract with the cantonal government and they need X number of engineers to work there. So they had to find something else for us to do. And at this point, I encountered, you know, real Cisco, quote unquote, and some people that I didn't enjoy working with that much. And so I started looking for another job. And it ended up being one of my side hobbies that got me the job, which was programming in the deprogramming language. I went to a conference, I got approached, and I ended up taking the plunge. And so right now, I'm mostly, I'm actually an independent in Switzerland, and I have clients, but basically my main clients are Symmetry Investments, which is a hedge fund that was founded in 2015 in Hong Kong. Now we have offices in Hong Kong, London, Singapore, and Jersey. And they also let me work 20% of my time as the co-leader of the deprogramming language. So there's Walter Bright, which is the person who invented the language. And there's me, I'm in charge of the standard library. And the both of us make decisions with regards to what happens to the language, how it changes, and that kind of thing. So I contribute to the compiler, the runtime, and the standard library, as well as some other tools. Also, I have way too many D packages up on GitHub and other things as well. And mainly I work on tools for traders. So I don't do any trading myself. I do programming, and it's mostly done in D. There's also a lot of Python. We have a lot of languages in the company, actually, C#, Julia, Java, and still is our own language. It's called Symmetry Integration Language. And that's implemented in D. And I mostly work in the implementation of that language, which means talking to the people who use it, and also similar to my work in D, how the language evolves, its implementation, tooling. I'm working on a testing framework for it right now, for instance. And that's where I'm at right now. And there's my contact details on Twitter and my email here.